Got Anaheim in that 6th spot. You guys have them down at 7. So let's talk about the team that you mentioned a minute ago there, Chad, that you think is going to move up a little bit. It was a rough inaugural season for the Seattle Kraken. But they had a big offseason. They added Shane Wright, 4th overall in the draft. That was a bit of a surprise. They had a ton of picks in that draft. They add Oliver Bjorkstrand, and I could be missing a few. Oh, right, Andre Burakovsky as well. So that was a big signing for them. Chris Drieger is going to be out for a while. So the goaltending will be Philip Grubauer and Martin Jones, I believe, to start the season. Grubauer obviously had a rough year last year, but I think he is a lot better than that. I'm not sold on the moves that Seattle have made. I'm not sold on it all working out. I think they'll be a little bit better. They're not going to finish at the bottom. I have them in the 7th spot, but again, I'm willing to have my mind changed. So, Chad, you mentioned them. Let's go to you for some thoughts on the Seattle Kraken going into year 2.
Yeah, so, I mean, you guys know this, and people who listen to the podcast know this. I was even big on Seattle last year, and the major problem for them was goaltending. They had league worst goaltending all year, no matter who was between the pipes, whether it was Grubauer, Drieger, or whoever. So just going on, the idea that goalies are kind of random and repeating incredibly good or incredibly bad results, is difficult at the NHL level. I just can't see another season that is as, atrocious between the pipes for this team as it was last year, because I think that would be, spectacular, to say the least, if they were able to repeat that. So I think, average goaltending for this team would do them wonders. You mentioned a lot of the ads, which personally I really like, adding a guy like Burakovsky, adding Bjorkstrand for, picks, like virtually nothing. If you're the Columbus Blue Jackets, you got virtually nothing in return for one of your best players. Shane Wright being added to this mix if he plays all year. I would expect that he would, to be honest. And then adding Matty Beniers for a full season as well. So there's 4 guys who kind of round out your top 6, or depending where you want to play them, who add to that forward group, who all have scoring touch, who all can put the puck in the net. And that was one of the other problems last year is, like famously last year, I said they were going to score by committee, and Casey's like, well, I don't think anyone's going to score at all. And he was kind of right. They didn't score a ton of goals. So I just think that this team has improved in key ways. The big question mark for me now is still the back end on defense. I think it's okay, but they're not very mobile. Losing Giordano at the deadline, kind of exposed their defense's mobility sort of as a group. They don't really have anybody other than Vince Dunn, really, who plays meaningful minutes, who can really skate and move the puck well. So that is a big concern for me. But like I said, this team, along with basically all of the other ones in the middle, going from, Vegas, LA, including Seattle, Vancouver, and Anaheim, I think any of these teams can make the playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised. And I think Seattle is just a bit of a step ahead of Anaheim, and that's why I have them at number 6.
I'm still not there on Seattle. I think this was the biggest debate somehow last year out of all the teams. I just would not budge. And maybe, one of the only times I've been really right on the podcast. And I feel like I was with this team. There's still just a lot of question marks. The whole back end's a question mark to me. Goaltending's still a question mark to me. The fact that they were one of the worst penalty killing teams in the whole league last year, and they're a team full of third liners last year, that doesn't add up. So that's a huge question mark to me. What I will say, though, is that they are starting to go in the right direction. They're starting to take form. They're not only third line players now. They have a couple second line players on this team, and Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand. You don't know, maybe Matty Beniers is a first line player already. We'll see how that turns out this year. Excited to see what Shane Wright can do in here. You're starting to get a center core that is kind of starting to get scary. There's things that are stepping in the right direction. I'm just still not there for them. I think that they're going to continue to make some big moves, maybe next year in the offseason, and the third season will be Seattle's year.
Yeah, for playoffs, you're saying to make the playoffs.
No, they're not even remotely close to a cup.
Yeah. So, but we are agreeing on number 6 though, because you still have them ahead of Anaheim, correct?
Oh yeah.
So then the only difference the only thing I have for Seattle, I have them ahead of Vancouver as well, just because I don't really believe in Vancouver, but I see the arguments for both sides there. So, our thoughts on Seattle.
I mean, I kind of gave my 2 cents on the Kraken when I opened them up into the discussion, but I just the goaltending is going to be a big thing. Like, can Philip Grubauer get back to being the guy that he was in Washington and Colorado? It's as simple as that. And Martin Jones was actually not too bad, not absolutely terrible last year on a terrible hockey team in the Philadelphia Flyers as the backup. So, you know what? It's someone to kind of be a stopgap until Chris Drieger comes back, or they just decide to roll with those two. They've got a 3-headed monster now, I mean, Burakovsky is a guy that can score, and he's won 2 Stanley Cups. That's a good ad. And obviously having Wright and Beniers as your 2 centers for years to come is something that's going to be really special for them. I just don't think they're there yet, but they did add, they've got some key veterans there, even more so than Anaheim. So I'd be willing to settle with them at number 6 and Anaheim down to 7. But the goaltending and the back end are the 2 big question marks for me. So we'll see how it goes.
I'll say this about the goaltending just to finish off on Seattle. Martin Jones has not been good in a long, long time in the NHL. I didn't like him as a backup option. I think he was just available, and that was, someone who was out there, and he needed to fill that position, like you said, for a stopgap before Drieger comes back. So I don't love the backup, but you look at Philip Grubauer, and until last season, he, was a guy who has always been above average in terms of goals saved above expected, except for 1 year last season where he was just abysmal, one of the worst in the entire league virtually all season. So part of that clearly is playing on a poor team. Part of that clearly is just an anomaly. So if I'm a betting man, and I am, I would bet that Grubauer regresses to his mean, like he's been over the last 5-6 years in the NHL. So that's what I'm betting on, this team being, at least better than they were last season. I just can't imagine goaltending that bad again. It just doesn't make sense.
You can make a lot of arguments about this team to put them higher than Anaheim in my mind, but for some reason goaltending, well, not for some reason, it's the goaltending voodoo. I can't put too much weight.
I know.
Ever in either direction.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point, right? Like last year was so crazy. You would just expect this year wouldn't be even worse. Like it would be somewhere between their average and what happened last year.
You're talking statistically and logically about goaltenders in the NHL.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's like if Grubauer is the worst goalie in the NHL this year again for a second straight season by that wide of a margin, that would be like a statistical anomaly that we haven't seen in decades.
Yeah, no, that would be pretty shocking for sure. It was rough, but again, it was their first season. Like maybe like that is something to it. Like that it was the first year for this team, so it's definitely going to go better for them. And I'm willing to move them up just above Anaheim.